you never go dim. Sing it 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. We got the right stuff. We put the hammer right down. Wanna be like us? You better stick around. If you want it, you gotta prove it. Like we do it, like we do it. Do it like we do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Stone, the Marketing and Communications Manager at Downtown Cleveland Alliance. And before we get started with today's webinar, I'd like to give everyone an update and let you know that Michael Deemer, who you all know has been serving as the interim president and CEO for Downtown Cleveland Alliance, has been approved and named as the president and CEO of Downtown Cleveland Alliance going forward. So we'd like to send our congratulations to Michael, and we'd like to thank him for his leadership. We look forward to the next chapter of Downtown Cleveland Alliance with Michael Deemer at the helm. So thank you and congratulations to Michael Deemer. Turning towards the webinar, I'd like to thank you all for joining DCA for the 36th episode of Downtown Now webinar series. And after the interview portion of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. Throughout the webinar, you are welcome to submit your questions using the comment section. As our organizations continue navigating pathways to advance the community in a time when our country was suffering from the effects of the global pandemic and an outcry for social justice, at DCA, we began to talk about how we could improve diversity and equity in downtown Cleveland. Last year, as a response to the murder of George Floyd, DCA supported the City of Cleveland's declaration of systemic racism as a public health crisis, formed a committee to address racial equity and inclusion in our community, and partnered with Karamu House and Ingenuity Cleveland to create the Voices of Cle Public Arts Project to amplify the voices of Black and Brown artists and the spirit of keeping the conversation going. From those initiatives and partnerships at DCA, we began to talk about how the community could coalesce around Juneteenth 2021. This year, Karamu House, along with Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Ingenuity Cleveland, and 30+ partners, supporters, and organizations collaborated to introduce the first MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Freedom Fest, with the aim to educate, celebrate, and activate participants around the history of African American culture. Today, we have with us the one and only Tony Sias, President and CEO of Karamu House, the oldest historically Black theater in the country, who will help us recap the first MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Freedom Fest. And we'll also talk about the impact that events like these have on downtown Cleveland. Thank you for being with us today, Tony.
Thank you, Jonathan, for having me. And first, I just want to say congratulations to Michael Deemer for his new appointment as President and CEO of Downtown Cleveland Alliance. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you, and extremely excited. Let's jump right into the interview portion. Today, before we really get into Juneteenth, Tony, I want to ask you to give us a brief overview, or maybe not so brief overview of Karamu House, since it's been in existence for so long, and the impact that the oldest historically Black theater has had on not only our city, but our country.
Yeah, well, Karamu House, as you mentioned, is the oldest Black producing theater in the country, celebrating 106 years. We were founded as a settlement house, and settlement houses were kind of early forms of social service agencies. And primarily in 1915, we were serving Eastern European immigrants. During about 1917, there were two little Black boys on the front porch of Karamu House, and they asked Mrs. Jelliff, Russell and Rowena Jelliff were the founders of Karamu House. They asked Mrs. Jelliff could they come in, and that began the integration of Karamu House in 1917. So it speaks to Karamu House being a conscious organization from its inception in terms of giving back and dealing with issues around social rights and social justice. Karamu was then noted to be a place to be replicated around the country. So by the 1940s and 50s, people were coming from around the world to study Karamu House as a place where diverse cultures were coming together. By the 1970s, we were known as the premier training ground for African Americans. So as we sit here today, our mission is to produce professional theater, provide arts education, and present community programs for all people while honoring the African American experience.
Great, great, and thank you. I remember as a child, I think I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. My mother told me that we were going to Karamu. I didn't know what for, and lo and behold, Rosa Parks was at Karamu House. So I know that a lot of notable figures have come through Karamu House, and I was wondering if you could expand on some of those notable people that have made their way through Karamu House. I know Langston Hughes is one of them, but if you could just, give us some more.
So, well, Langston Hughes went to Central High School and grew up 2 streets over from the current location of Karamu House. So he got his start here. This is where he premiered and workshopped many of his early pieces right here at Karamu House. Then you think about people like Robert Guillaume. That was a television show called Benson that he was on. A woman by the name of Minnie Gentry, who happens to be Terrence Howard's grandmother, got her start here at Karamu House. Then you think about people from like Bill Cobbs, who this is his foundation here. Ruby Dee, Vanessa Bell Calloway, James Pickens Jr. from who's on Grey's Anatomy, and Imani Hakim. So the list goes on of people who found their start here at Karamu House, that this was a foundation for them honing their craft, and then they've gone on to be very successful in the industry.
A lot of incredible legacy coming out of Karamu House. And then, as we think more closely to the present, as you know, and for all of us, 2020 was quite a challenging year, especially for the theater world. Can you take us through the past year and describe how the oldest Black producing theater adapted to remain not only relevant, but engaging through that time?
Well, we were all in shock in March when we were told to shut down. So, of course, we did as the mandate guided us. Shortly thereafter, we started taking the time to develop our summer arts program. So that was the first thing, that we had to figure out how we would provide services to young people, knowing that it would be distance learning. We were really pleased to find out that we were able to engage young people from around the country. So we had students enroll from Washington, D.C. to Seattle, Washington. And so we were not in the distance learning or virtual space prior to COVID-19. So we've been able to extend our educational reach so much further in that space. So we launched that program. But at the point that George Floyd was murdered in May, we knew that we had to respond to the murder and use our platform, arts, as a vehicle to, as you mentioned earlier, to educate, activate, but in addition to that, entertain individuals. We were going to celebrate Juneteenth with a concert honoring Bill Withers, who had recently passed at that time. But at the point of George Floyd's murder, I canceled the concert and said, no, we're going to do something called Freedom on Juneteenth, which was a devised work, a new work, that over 80% of the material in that was new material. And of course, we did pieces that included Langston and so forth and so on. So Freedom on Juneteenth really dealt with the murder of George Floyd, but educated people around the history of Juneteenth. Our goal was to reach 10,000 people. But within the first day or so, we had reached over 50,000 viewers. And so we were able to really carry the message of a Juneteenth, what it meant, because the production really started at the point of 1862, at the point of the Emancipation Proclamation being signed, 1865, when Galveston, Texas, June 19th, the last people who were enslaved were notified that they had been freed for over 2.5 years. Then we kind of went through the Harlem Renaissance. After we left the Harlem Renaissance in the production, we kind of then went to the murder of Emmett Till. And by all accounts, the murder of Emmett Till was the inciting incident to the civil rights movement. So we then dealt with from Emmett Till to George Floyd. And at the murder of George Floyd, I feel like was the global activation of Black Lives Matter. And so it was so important for us to use those two incidents to talk about the historical trajectory of Black folks in this country. We were able to reach people from around the world, but most importantly, we were able to educate them about Juneteenth. In addition to that, educate them about our institution and the plight and journey of Black folks. So go ahead.
So I just wanted to back up for a moment and really flesh out the meaning of Juneteenth and why we celebrate that day.
So Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, troops were sent to Galveston, Texas to notify the enslaved Black folks that they had been free for over 2.5 years. Shortly thereafter, primarily in churches, they began to celebrate Juneteenth in 1866. There were things like barbecues. There's a tradition of drinking cherry soda during Juneteenth. Once upon a time, there was in some communities, there was a Miss Juneteenth festival, a pageant. So people over the years, it has evolved in terms of how you celebrate Juneteenth. Karamu House has been celebrating Juneteenth for about 15 years, to my knowledge. I've only been here 6 years come October. And that first Juneteenth was celebrated with Japo Cultural Arts. So, Japo and Karamu partnered, and Japo has continued that tradition, moving away from Karamu because they outgrew the Karamu footprint. So Juneteenth is the true emancipation and liberation day, from my vantage point, of Black Americans.
Yeah, and I think when I was in 7th grade, that's when I first became aware of Juneteenth. And at that point, I couldn't understand why it wasn't already a national holiday and celebrated everywhere by all people in every community. And so, I was, looking for different ways to celebrate. And I remember 2 years ago, I did go to Karamu House, and in your parking lot, you all had a full-on Juneteenth celebration going, and it was just great to be there with my family, enjoying and celebrating Black liberation. So thank you for doing that and being ahead of the game in a lot of senses.
Well, that was led out by our education manager, Letitia Wilson, who was adamant about elevating Juneteenth at Karamu House upon her arrival as our education manager. And I just want to say, that's us living the name of Karamu House, which is a Swahili word that means a place of joyful gathering. And that is what we live that purpose and that definition on a daily basis.
So we noted that DCA has worked with Karamu House on projects recently, like Voices of Cleve Public Arts Project. Can you take us through Karamu's decision to partner with DCA and Ingenuity for the first MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Freedom Festival?
I mean, it was just the right thing to do. I think over the years, in various communities throughout Cleveland, Juneteenth has been celebrated. And we want those community celebrations to continue because the community and neighborhoods are what makes us up as a city. And it was an opportunity to say, let's then go to a central location in the heart of the city where people can culminate their day and and celebrating Juneteenth in this collective effort. So it was just logical. It made sense. It was like, yeah, this makes sense. This is something we should do. And it's nothing like partnering with an organization who has as much experience in producing events. DCA and Ingenuity both are part of your mission is to produce and share the riches of the city with the community and the region and the country and the world. So it just made sense for these three entities to come together under the umbrella of the MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Festival.
And I agree. And from your vantage point, how did you feel the event went?
It was an overwhelming success, and I would say it even exceeded my expectations. I have to say that sprinkling of rain was one thing, but by 5:42, I think that's when I looked at my watch. The skies parted, the sun came out. It was beautiful to just see the diversity of Cleveland present, to look at, it's my understanding that we had almost 10,000 people during the course of the day come through, to see the diversity of people working the festival, to see Black vendors selling their wares, to see organizations being able to communicate, educate, and share information about whether it's around health disparities, whether it's about health and wellness, arts and culture. It was just wonderful. And what I appreciate was the diversity of Blackness that was there. And that does not minimize the racial and ethnic diversity across the board that was present. But it was just a beautiful day. And I'm excited to talk about the second annual MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Festival and get more people involved and to be a part of a coordinated effort throughout the city where individuals can be in neighborhoods and communities and include the collective effort of the MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth downtown.
If I may, for a moment, can you tell me what might have been your favorite moment of the festival? There were so many in my mind. I know it may be hard, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this, but I'm just interested to know.
There was a main stage, and then there was a community stage. And watching the various artists, young, old, disabled, able, do and share their craft was just incredible. I'm completely biased by the young people who represented Karamu, but that was one young man, and I think his name was, it was Kamal. It was similar to Karamu. He was a pianist, vocalist, that he had written this song for his girlfriend, and his patter before he started singing spoke to the fact that they had broken up. But he had this passion, and it was about mocha latte. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. So it was just incredible. But to just see the community stage and the representation of the diversity of Cleveland's community and what was being shared was really just breathtaking and humbling.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I said, there are so many moments, but the Karamu Kids performance was especially inspiring for me because, it's great to see young people so passionate, so engaged and passionate about culture, art, and their Blackness. And so I was very impressed by them. So kudos to you all over at Karamu for putting that together and getting them prepared. Additionally, Japo. Shout out to Japo. They did a great job. I mean, there's just something, I don't know if you saw, but when the drums started going, the people started coming. There's an attractiveness to the drumming that just pulls people in. And I think everybody felt that. at that moment. And then, of course, Terry Lynn Carrington in social science, Lisa Fisher and Mumu Fresh had a great culminating performance at the end when the fireworks were going up. It was just amazing to see. And so I'm just happy to be a part of it and to be there. And I can't say it enough. Thank you for your partnership in that.
You're welcome. And I just want to underscore something you said. Japo grounded us in culture and in the African tradition. And in terms of establishing the libation and calling on the ancestors and those who have come before us, getting permission from the audience, the elders from the audience to move forward with the celebration of the day, coupled with the drums and the call and response experience, really laid the foundation for the spirit of Juneteenth that I feel like is so important, that we need to acknowledge the purpose first and then move forward. So Japo was really incredible as one of the memorable moments for me as well.
Yeah, and having it in downtown Cleveland for me just put an extra layer of icing on that cake, because at DCA we talk a lot about downtown Cleveland being a gathering place, a place where people gather to enjoy themselves and create memories, and I can safely say that for me, there were some memories that will last a lifetime that I will cherish forever.
Yes.
So I'm very appreciative, and just wanted to ask you about the importance of having, more diversity and diverse events in downtown Cleveland.
I just think it's important. I think that if you think about the demographics of the city of Cleveland, then events should reflect the demographics of the city. And so I feel like this Juneteenth festival was an example of reflecting the diversity and the demographics of a city present on Mall C. It was a beautiful celebration, a peaceful moment to see the wealth and beauty of Cleveland all come together in the heart of the city. And I think that that's so important to have this kind of inaugural event serve as a model for other opportunities to be in the city, to have events that are culturally specific, that bring the entire city, county, and region together in celebration of what we have to offer as a community.
Yeah. And Tony, you noted earlier that we had about 10,000 attendees. We've collected data from our vendors through a survey, and also our partners. And it looks like we've had 27 million earned impressions across paid social and earned media outlets.
Wow.
And of the 50 vendors that participated and sold merchandise, they sold an average of $1,800 in sales for vendors, and 83% sold more than 50% of their available inventory, and 100% of vendors noted that they would participate next year. So not only did we celebrate and have a great event, we were active in supporting Black businesses. And, can you just speak to how important that is to support our Black-owned and minority-owned businesses?
Well, I just want to say yes, and Karamu sold out of all of our inventory in the first 3 hours. I think that many times Black businesses are don't necessarily, many of them don't have storefronts, so they are pop-up businesses. And when you have events like this gives an opportunity for individuals and the community to be introduced to these vendors, to understand the products are most often high quality, are usable, and that's usually a little something for everybody that you can find, that you can have an interest in. So it also is a marketing opportunity to better understand the breadth and depth of businesses in our community, and an opportunity to have an audience of diverse people from around our community to come to see it, to understand that there's a wealth out there, and to purchase, because this is about the economic empowerment of people of color as well, Black folks, especially at a festival such as the MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth.
Thank you. And so before we get to the questions from that Lauren will be fielding from the audience, just one follow-up question, noting the numbers that we just presented. How do you see the MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Freedom Festival growing in the coming years?
I have a vision that, soon we'll have to go to a larger footprint to be able to be more expansive, that, it has the opportunity to be a multi-day, a weekend-like festival, that vendors will come from around the country and participate, that it will be a destination event for those, because we as Cleveland have created a festival that truly represents the spirit and energy of Juneteenth, that will separate from us from many in the best of ways. So the sky is the limit. It was proven that there is an interest, that people are engaged, and that the community was fully engaged in this festival. So I think we have a rich future ahead of us in terms of producing this event.
I agree, and I'm looking forward to it. For those that weren't able to be there last Saturday, there are opportunities in the coming years, as this will be an annual event. But in the meantime, we do have a short clip of highlights to show you before we get to our questions from the audience. So I'm going to play that clip really quickly, and then we're going to pivot to the audience. So as you can see, it was a fun day. The visuals were amazing. Right now, I'm going to ask Lauren to start asking some questions that we've been receiving from our audience today.
Sure thing. Hi, Tony.
Hello.
How you doing?
Great.
Great. First question, what is Karamu working on or planning that we can look forward to?
So we will officially open our season in October. In late July, we will be announcing our 2021 season. We're going to have a couple of concerts in between time. So we plan to have a concert sometimes in August and maybe one in September. And there'll also be a visual art exhibition in September as well, prior to the opening of our 2021-22 season.
Awesome. Next question is, there was an article recently of Karamu House working with Case Western Reserve. Can you speak to that article and any, I think it's regarding the history of how you two or the two organizations are working together.
So recently, Karamu gifted our archives to the Kelvin Smith Library at Case Western Reserve University. And when I got here in 2015, in October 2015, I would get these phone calls from, people from the community and scholars asking about, do you have a playbill from 1946? Do you have these other historical documents? So that was the impetus to say that, we needed to organize, arrange, and scan our archives in a way that they would be available for the community and for scholars. We then began to partner with Cleveland Public Library, they've been incredible in helping us do just that, to organize and scan and digitize the archives. And also we've had interns from Summer on the Cuyahoga, many of those interns coming from Smith College, to come in and help us actually the hands-on work in getting those things done. So it's been 3 or 4 years in the making to have some order and know what we have in our archival collection, then have the conversation with the Kelvin Smith Library at Case. So once they then came in and did their, as the content experts, as archivists, they realized that we have something here. So we were excited to give them that information, our archival treasures. This process will happen over the next several years. There's a priority on getting some stuff kind of up and available to the community. That would include the letters from Langston Hughes that he was communicating back and forth with Russell and Rowena Jelliff, the founders of Karamu House. There's a guest book that we have that has signatures from people from all around the world, literally, I think from every continent except Antarctica. But it includes the signature of Dr. Martin Luther King, members of the Duke Ellington Orchestra, and the list goes on. So we will get high-res copies of replicas of those documents as well. So it's a really exciting time to have our archives be now housed in a very safe, and when I say safe, it's not just safe, I'm saying safe, protected from weather, lighting, water, temperature, so that it can have global access. So that's really exciting. I'm so pleased that we would be gifted to such an esteemed institution such as the Kelvin Smith Library at Case Western Reserve University.
That's awesome. Excellent. Next question is, can you speak a little bit about your location in the Fairfax neighborhood and involvement in the community around the theater?
Well, Karamu is located at East 89th and Quincy Avenue in the heart of the historic Fairfax community. And I say that our involvement in the community is really, the community is Cleveland. That people from all walks of life and all pockets of Cleveland are engaged in Karamu. So not only are we working with our community as a whole, we then work with Cleveland as a whole. And Karamu House is really one block east of what will soon be the Opportunity Corridor, which is connecting the east and west side of Cleveland. And so we're excited to be able to have markers to then guide people off of the Opportunity Corridor up to one block over to where we are. We're excited to then continue our capital renovations so that once people get to the corner of East 89th and Quincy Avenue, that they know that they've arrived at a destination location. The other part is that after we finish phase 3 of our capital improvements, we then are going to go into the master planning process to really involve the entire community in the conversation about how we as a whole come together and further develop this thoroughfare on Quincy Avenue. So we're excited to say that we work closely with Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation. Our partners do include Boyd Funeral Home, Antioch Church, Bolton Schools, and of course the Cleveland Clinic, in addition to other institutions that are around us. Excellent.
This one is still around the history again. Can you just refresh us on the history? I know you talked about it a little bit in the beginning. But the question is, what would you say to Clevelanders that are new to Karamu and want to learn more or get involved? So if you could just refresh us on that history and answer this question.
So first, involvement is become a member of Karamu House. You have an opportunity to do that. In addition to that, our season will open in October. We have an exciting season coming up, so keep your eyes and ears close to our season announcement. Continue to go to our website and become involved that way. We have a young professionals organization that we launched a couple of months ago. There's information on our website about that. We have our arts education programming, and we do a wealth of community programs, which includes, of course, MLK Day, Kwanzaa, Black History Month, and we celebrate Langston Hughes' birthday, which is February 1st. In addition to that, we do comedy, concerts, and poetry. So we not only do theater, but we have a wide breadth and depth of arts and cultural programs that happen here. We have community conversations. But when you begin to speak about the history of Karamu, we have an incredible history. We were one of the few organizations In the cultural arts organizations, they got WPA dollars back in the day. That was a part of the New Deal. Karamu originally was in the central neighborhood. And so from 1915 to 1939, we were in the central neighborhood, and there was a mysterious fire. And there was, there's some things that institutions don't talk about. Well, me and under my leadership, I want to unpack those things and talk about them, because history is so important to me. It's similar to when we begin to talk about Juneteenth. So many are just being introduced to it, but it's such an important part of American history. We begin to talk about history, and we talk about the Tulsa massacre or the destruction of Black Wall Street. So many people don't know about that history and its importance and impact on the financial wealth of Black Americans, because there were hundreds of boom towns here. So I'm going to get off my soapbox around truth and history, but that is so important to me in this seminal moment in American history. We have to tell the authentic and complete truth and learn history to better inform the choices that we want to make moving forward, to begin to eradicate systemic racism, which is number one here for me personally, and as a part of our role here at this institution. So I know I've gone all over the place in response to that question, but that's what I got for you.
All right. Next question is, with the success of MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Freedom Fest, how else do you think we can further boost Black-owned businesses downtown or in Cleveland?
Well, I think it's let's have the second annual MetroHealth Cleveland Juneteenth Festival. And I do think that organizations like DCA are fully engaged in answering that question in terms of how to have more Black businesses. And I do think it, from my vantage point, does start with having storefronts in downtown Cleveland. And how do you make that accessible and affordable for businesses to have a presence in the heart of the city? That's not my work, but that's my opinion.
Lauren, are there any more questions?
We can wrap up there. I mean, Jonathan, if you have anything to say.
Well, yeah. I just had a follow-up question, because I've been seeing a lot of, commentary about, Juneteenth being a symbolic holiday, and maybe that not having so much of an impact on, getting rid of systemic racism. So I'm just interested to hear from you how events like these help to combat systemic racism for people that are having trouble making that connection.
I think it's an opportunity to educate people about culture. And I think that quite often when we're dealing with systemic racism, it's really dealing with being uninformed. And so this is an opportunity to begin to have authentic conversations about history, understanding people are not a monolith, that it's ongoing exploration and understanding. And I do feel like it's important that we do take pause to celebrate, but also to educate and activate the community, using the arts as a vehicle for educating and creating awareness, to then talk about how people can be engaged and get involved. So there has to be a multi-pronged approach to addressing issues of systemic racism, or either, the health disparities in the African American community, or even police reform. So this is one step in a multi-pronged approach.
And speaking of education, there was a point on Saturday where Leon Bibb got on stage and he talked about the history of Juneteenth for those that may not have been aware, but he also gave his personal anecdote and history with the holiday and his family's history as well. And that was very thought-provoking and engaging. And so I just want to shout out Leon Bibb and also thank him publicly as well for coming on and doing that for us.
Yeah, it was great. And I think that it goes back to between Leon Bibb's education portion, JAPO, and in addition to the work that Karamu has presented as a part of the festival, really still kind of deals with our three pillars of entertaining, educating, activating, and celebrating. That was four. Go ahead.
All in all, it was a great day for our city. I know Michael has talked about the day and said this is how downtown should look and feel every day.
Yes.
And so we are happy for that. We also wanted to note that there were other celebrations that were taking place throughout Cleveland that were noted on our website as well, because we're not trying to monopolize Juneteenth, Freedom Fest. At Downtown Cleveland Alliance, we feel like everybody should be celebrating this important holiday, and so we were happy to share and amplify all of the activities going on throughout the respective neighborhoods. So, Tony, we've pretty much come up on our hour here. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to give some closing remarks and final thoughts. Really quick, if I could ask you to look through your crystal ball. Where do you see, Karamu House a year and a half, 2 years from now?
Sure. Well, I think a year from now, we will complete phase 3 of our capital renovations, which will include a beautiful new outdoor stage. We will have a bistro here. It would be the Smucker's Bistro here at Karamu House. We will have a renovated arena theater and a beautiful new streetscape on the Quincy Avenue side of the building with a huge marquee and pylon that will be promoting events and programs and activities that's happening here at Karamu House. When we think about the future, I feel like that my vision is to have Karamu be the anchor for the ACE district in Fairfax, which would be the Arts, Culture, and Education district, where we would see businesses and shops, but to be the cultural footprint, the flagship of Black arts and culture in Cleveland, right here in the heart of the Fairfax community, which is part of the Greater University Circle, which aligns to, being kind of a part of what is notable as the best cultural arts district in the country. And so the vision for Karamu House is to continue to contribute to being a part of the premier cultural arts district in our city.
Okay, and so any final thoughts before we leave here today?
I just want to say thank you for MetroHealth for being our signature sponsor, Downtown Cleveland Alliance for the vision of this event, Ingenuity for the incredible artists that we've been able to work with throughout this process, that I feel like this reflects the best of Cleveland, this collaboration, and all of the other partners and sponsors who jumped in eagerly to support this endeavor. I'm excited about the future and the potential of this festival and what it can not only mean to Cleveland, but to the region, to the state, and our country.
And I echo those sentiments. Thank you, Tony, for partnering with us in bringing Karamu downtown for the first Freedom Fest. It was an incredible experience. I had a lot of fun. Like I said earlier, I will cherish those memories for the rest of my life, and I look forward to creating new ones in the coming years. Thank you once again for being with us today on this webinar as we recap the events of last Saturday. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Downtown Now webinar. We'll be back soon. And so thank you all once again for attending today, and have a great evening. Good night.